Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm Stacey Sims, and every other Friday I bring you a short episode with the top diabetes stories and headlines happening now. Our top story this week, more information showing the benefit of GLP drugs for people with type 1 diabetes. This is looking at off-label use of semaglutide and tirzepatide, and these researchers say it leads to significant reductions in A1Cs and in body weight. This was a small but real-world study about 150 adults with type 1 who either took semaglutide, the ingredient in Ozempic, tirzepatide, that's in Mounjaro, and a control group. After 1 year, the tirzepatide group had an average weight loss of 21% and a little over half a percentage point reduction in A1C. The semaglutide group saw a 9% weight loss and similar A1C improvements, but the control group, no change in weight or glycemic control. One analyst point out that type 1 is an area with, quote, few pharmacologic advances beyond insulin therapy, but there are challenges here, including regulatory hurdles and reimbursement models that would support an expanded indication. Dexcom received a warning letter earlier this month after the FDA found problems at facilities in Arizona and California. Dexcom says the letter, which the FDA has yet to publish, describes, quote, non-conformities in the manufacturing processes and quality management systems at the facilities, but the FDA says Dexcom is still allowed to make and sell devices and seek clearance of new products. Dexcom says it had already implemented some changes 3 months ago in response to questions from the FDA and says it, quote, intends to continue to undertake certain corrections and corrective actions. Should older people who use insulin stop worrying about tighter time in range? Big article in the New York Times profiling people over 70 whose doctors want them to let their A1Cs go a little higher. And this is a good article. It talks about how hard that is for people with diabetes to do. And more than a decade ago, the American Geriatric Society called for a hemoglobin A1C of 7.5 to 8 for most older adults with diabetes. They call this de-intensification. It can mean stopping a drug, lowering a dose, or switching to another medication. A 2021 study of Medicare beneficiaries with diabetes looked at patients who had gone to an emergency room or had been hospitalized because of hypoglycemia. Fewer than half of those folks had their medication regimens de-intensified within the last 100 days. And it's especially an issue in nursing homes. I'm linking up the full article. Of course, everything you're hearing on In the News is always linked up at diabetes-connections.com. New research suggests that automated insulin delivery systems are safe and effective for use by older adults with type 1, and the findings counter common assumptions that older folks are going to struggle to use the more advanced technology. This is the largest clinical trial to enroll older adults with type 1. The trial focused on uniquely relevant factors for older people: technology usability, preventing low blood sugar. The study tested the efficacy of 2 AID systems, a hybrid closed-loop system and a predictive low-glucose suspend system, compared to just a regular old insulin pump. These were 78 people over the age of 65 who used each device for 12 weeks. The hybrid closed-loop system proved most effective at keeping blood sugar in the target range, 74% compared to 67% for the predictive low-glucose system and 66% for the sensor-augmented pump. By the way, as many of you have probably already thought to yourself, the predictive low-glucose suspend systems have been discontinued in the U.S., but these researchers say the study overall shows the participants are equally willing to embrace automated devices and found them as easy to use as the non-automated device. Blue Circle Health expands its free virtual clinical care education and support program for adults with type 1 to Mississippi, and that marks the 9th state for the nonprofit. People with T1D over 18 years of age who speak English or Spanish are eligible to enroll. Zealand Pharma and Roche have entered a collaboration and license agreement to co-develop an amylin analog as a future foundational therapy for people with obesity. The drug is a once-weekly shot. Amylin is produced in the pancreas. It's secreted along with insulin. It's a hormone that helps you feel full. Current clinical data suggests a potential of this drug to deliver weight loss comparable to GLP drugs, and it is currently in phase 2 clinical trials. Since the 1990s, doctors have prescribed metformin to treat diabetes, but scientists didn't fully understand how it worked. New research fills in one piece of the puzzle. Metformin triggers the body to expel glucose from the bloodstream into the intestines, where bacteria feed on the carbohydrate to make compounds that may help control blood sugar levels. This is a new study. Most research has focused on metformin's effects in the liver, where it boosts how cells respond to insulin and blocks the synthesis of glucose. This was a really interesting article that is trying to answer questions I didn't know we had to ask. In fact, these scientists say they think what they're talking about here explains only part of metformin's therapeutic effects. More help for people with diabetes and eating disorders. The Emily program announced an expansion of care. It is offered only in Durham, North Carolina right now. People with diabetes are at higher risk of developing eating disorders. The Emily program press release says that the Diabetes and Eating Disorder Management Program leverages the expertise of nutrition, medical therapy, and psychiatry staff to address the complexities of eating disorders that coexist with diabetes. And finally, I love getting stories like this. In early February, the Jewish home at Rockley hosted a program for one of its residents, 89-year-old Julian Rubin. Julian goes by Yudi, and he has lived with diabetes for 80 years. He was diagnosed at age 10 in 1945. In 2005, he was part of the first cohort of the Joslin Diabetes Center Medalist Program, which of course studies diabetes patients over the course of decades. And this year, he is one of 2 people to get an 80-year medal. My absolute favorite part of this fantastic article, and I would really urge you, I'm going to link it up, please read it, is how his family kept a kosher home. But bacon was on the menu that the hospital sent them home with. So they considered bacon medicine, but his siblings were not allowed to eat it. He says he would have traded the bacon for diabetes. Yudi, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you to his family for sharing him a little bit with us through this article. Just great stuff. And before I let you go, we are keeping an eye out next week for ATTD. This is the Advanced Technologies and Treatments for Diabetes Conference. Unfortunately, I am not going to Amsterdam to cover it, but there's a lot of interesting news expected out of this conference. I'll definitely post on social if anything breaks through, but we will definitely be following up, doing a lot of interviews with the studies that come out. If you see or read anything that really strikes your fancy, you want to know more, please reach out and let me know. I will do my best to bring you more coverage of it. And that is in the news. If you like it, please share it. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.